You apologize when someone bumps into you. You apologize to your dog when you accidentally step near them. You apologize before sending an email that contains a perfectly reasonable request. You apologize for apologizing. Someone asks you what you want for dinner and you feel a familiar panic because whatever you say, you will need to make sure it is not too much trouble. You have been told you are too sensitive, a people pleaser, a pushover, that you need to learn to stand up for yourself. And the strangest part, you can see yourself doing it, and you cannot stop. Here is why. But today, I want to offer you a different perspective, one that is a little kinder and a lot more scientific. I know exactly what you have been told, that you are too sensitive, too much, a pushover, that you say sorry when you have done nothing wrong, and you cannot explain why. You cannot just stop. Here is what nobody tells you. Your reflex to apologize is not a character flaw. It is a nervous system response, one that was encoded very early by an environment where someone else's displeasure was genuinely dangerous, and your brain found the fastest available solution: appease first, survive. What you are living with is what psychologists call the chronic appeaser pattern, and it has a very specific origin in the way the nervous system responds to perceived threat. Your sorry is not an apology. It is a peace offering, a preemptive strike against a conflict your nervous system expects even when none exists, and it was built before you were old enough to evaluate whether the conflict was real. Psychologists and neuroscientists have identified 3 interlocking mechanisms that explain why the apology reflex forms, why it persists, and why willpower alone cannot stop it. None of these are about being weak. All of them are about being shaped. Mechanism 1. The amygdala economy. Imagine a smoke alarm calibrated so sensitively that it goes off every time you make toast. The alarm is not broken. It is doing exactly what it was trained to do, but now you are making toast, and the alarm is treating it like a house fire. We call this the amygdala economy, and it explains why you cannot just decide to stop. When your brain senses social tension, it does not calculate who is at fault. It fires an alarm. Research confirms that perceived threats to social standing, someone's displeasure, a moment of awkwardness, the possibility of conflict, activate the same physiological stress system as physical danger. Your HPA axis fires, cortisol rises, your body is in threat mode. The apology is the fastest available discharge for that alarm, not because you are guilty, because your nervous system has learned that it works. Psychologists call this appeasement behavior, and here is the part that may surprise you. It appears across primates. Chimpanzees use submissive gestures to reduce aggression from dominant individuals. We do the same thing with a quiet sorry before anyone has even gotten upset. Wild, right? Research shows that chronic over-apologizers score higher on anxiety and lower on self-worth. And separately, people who decline to apologize when they have done nothing wrong report higher self-esteem. The apology reflex is not protecting your relationships. Over time, it is eroding your identity. Now, mechanism 2, the Fawn Response. But here is the architecture that built the alarm in the first place. You may have heard of fight, flight, and freeze. These are the 3 trauma responses most people know, but there is a 4th one, and it is the one that built your apology reflex. Psychotherapist Pete Walker calls it the Fawn Response, when the nervous system determines that confronting, escaping, or shutting down a threat is not safe, especially when the threat is someone you depend on. Like a parent, it activates a different strategy. Make the threat happy. Become more appealing to the source of danger. Appease first, survive. Stephen Porges' polyvagal theory explains the neural mechanism behind this. When fight, flight, and freeze are not viable, the social engagement system activates. Appeasement becomes the calculated survival strategy. The nervous system does not evaluate whether the threat is real. It responds to perceived danger with the same precision it would use for a physical one. For children who grow up with caregivers whose moods are unpredictable, critical, or volatile, the Fawn response makes perfect sense. You learn that someone else's displeasure is your problem to solve. You get extraordinarily skilled at reading a room, and you develop your primary tool, the apology. Think of it this way. Imagine you are a citizen in a volatile kingdom. The king's mood shifts without warning. You learn, over time, that bringing gifts when you sense his displeasure keeps you safe. Eventually, you bring gifts before he is displeased. Not because you did something wrong, because you have learned to prevent the storm. That is the Fawn response. The sorry is the gift, sent before anyone asks for it. This is why you apologize when someone bumps into you. Your nervous system is not evaluating fault. It is executing a protocol it built for a very different environment, one where preventing conflict meant preventing pain. And here is the third mechanism. This is the one nobody talks about, and it may be the one that explains why, even when you know all of this, you still cannot seem to stop. Mechanism 3. The self-erasure loop. Here is what nobody tells you about chronic over-apologizing. Every unnecessary sorry sends your brain a message, not a dramatic one, a quiet one, said in the same tone as all the others. And it says, you are the problem. Over years, that message becomes a belief, and the belief demands more behavior to support it. Aaron Beck's cognitive research confirms this loop. When you repeatedly apologize for having opinions, you are not just expressing the belief that your opinions are a burden. You are building that belief. The behavior creates the cognition. The apology teaches you that you need to apologize. Pete Walker describes fawn types as hiding behind a helpful persona. They give service, but never risk real self-exposure. Over time, the persona becomes the whole identity. You stop knowing what you want when someone asks you. You stop knowing what you think when you are asked for an opinion, because the only self you have practiced presenting is the one that exists to keep others comfortable. Researcher Brené Brown puts it plainly. We cultivate love when we allow our most vulnerable and powerful selves to be deeply seen and known. Chronic apologizing prevents this. Every preemptive sorry is a small act of self-concealment. We call this the self-erasure loop. The behavior creates the belief. The belief demands more behavior, and both of them work together to shrink the self that was already learning to disappear. Stay with me, because here is the evolutionary argument. The appeasement instinct evolved as a genuine survival strategy. In environments where social exclusion meant death, the ability to quickly signal submission and maintain group membership was adaptive. The Fawn Response is ancient, embodied intelligence. It kept children alive in situations that were genuinely dangerous. The problem is not the intelligence. The problem is that your nervous system never got the update. You are no longer a child. The people around you are not the people who made you apologize, and you have more options now than appease or suffer. This is why willpower does not work. You cannot decide your way out of a pattern encoded at the level of survival, but you can interrupt it. And interruption, repeated consistently, creates new encoding. If you have spent your whole life being called a people pleaser without anyone explaining where it came from, subscribe. This is the conversation this channel exists to have. But I need to make space for a distinction that matters. Not all over-apologizing comes from the same source. Everything I have described today, the Fawn Response, the Amygdala Economy, the Self-Erasure loop, applies when your apologizing is an appeasement reflex. When it happens before conflict, in response to imagined displeasure, in situations where you are not responsible for anything, there is a different kind of over-apologizing that comes from genuine guilt, from actual harm caused that has not been addressed, or from a moral sensitivity that is functioning correctly and pointing at something real. That version deserves to be listened to, not suppressed. And there is a third version, less commonly discussed. When apologizing becomes a ritual that cannot be stopped, even after the person has been reassured, when the need to apologize feels compulsive, and saying sorry does not relieve the urgency, but intensifies it. That pattern can be connected to OCD, and it needs a specific clinical conversation, not a YouTube video. Here is what I want you to sit with. When you apologize, does it bring relief, or do you immediately feel the urge to apologize again? And is the apology for something you actually believe you did? Or is it for being? The first pattern I can help you interrupt. The second requires a different conversation. Either way, you deserve to know the difference. So, here is my proposal for you. We call this two-step process, the sorry audit and the grounded no. The first step makes the reflex visible. The second gives your nervous system a different script. Step 1. The sorry audit. For 1 week, write down every time you apologize, not to judge yourself, to see yourself clearly. Note what you were apologizing for and whether you were actually at fault. You are likely to discover that a significant proportion of your sorries are preemptive, offered before any complaint, before any displeasure, sometimes before any other person has formed an opinion. This is the audit. It makes the invisible pattern visible, and what you can see, you can begin to work with. Step 2, the pause. Between the stimulus and the sorry, create a pause. The Fawn Response is fast, faster than thought, but it is not faster than a breath. When you feel the familiar urgency to apologize, pause for one breath, not to suppress the apology, just to create a space between the alarm and the action. In that space, ask one question. Did I actually do something I need to repair? Or is my nervous system just uncomfortable? That question is the beginning of the interruption. Step 3. The grounded no. Replace preemptive apologies with grounded statements. Not aggressive, not defensive, grounded. Instead of, I'm so sorry to bother you, but could you possibly try? I have a question. Instead of, sorry, I just wanted to check in, try. I wanted to check in. The apology was not adding warmth to those sentences. It was adding self-subordination. Remove it and say what you were actually going to say. Your nervous system will be uncomfortable with this for a while. That discomfort is not danger. It is recalibration. You are not too much. You are not a burden. You are not in the way. You are someone whose nervous system learned, in a very specific environment, that taking up space came with consequences. That environment is not your whole life, and the reflexes it built are not your whole self. You are allowed to have needs, opinions, preferences, a presence in a room that does not begin with an apology. No sorry required. Start with the sorry audit this week. Just 7 days of noticing, not changing noticing. What you see will tell you everything you need to know. And if you have ever finished watching a relationship fall apart and thought, I did it again, it was me. I made a video specifically on the psychology of people who feel like they ruin every relationship. Click here. It explains why that conclusion is almost always wrong. And it picks up exactly where this one leaves off. If this channel has ever helped you understand yourself a little better, subscribe. This is the conversation we are here for.